My wife laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. She leaned back in her chair, folded her arms and looked straight into my eyes. "You'll never leave me," she said with a smug smile. "You don't have the courage." The restaurant suddenly felt much quieter. People at nearby tables had started noticing our argument. I didn't answer. I simply reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, and placed it on the table between us. The smile on her face disappeared almost instantly. She stared at the screen for several long seconds. Her hands began to tremble. Then she whispered, How did you get this?" For the first time in years, she wasn't controlling the conversation anymore. She wasn't laughing anymore. Because everything she had spent months trying to hide was staring back at her from my phone. My name is Tapua Akinjide. I'm 42 years old, and I own a successful logistics company in Kigali. For 18 years I believed my marriage to Eshandlovu was built on honesty, respect, and loyalty. We had no perfect life, but I thought we faced every challenge together. Over time, however, something changed. Late-night messages, unexplained business trips, secretive phone calls. Whenever I asked simple questions, she laughed and called me insecure. Eventually, she became so confident that one afternoon she looked me in the eye and said, "You'll never leave me." She thought she knew me. She had no idea I had already discovered the truth. At first, I tried to convince myself that every marriage goes through difficult seasons. People get stressed, arguments happen, and misunderstandings come and go. But something about Esh had changed, and it wasn't just her attitude. She no longer seemed worried whenever I questioned her about coming home late or disappearing for hours without a clear explanation. Instead of looking nervous or trying to defend herself, she smiled as if my questions were nothing more than a joke. The more I asked, the more confident she became. She would lean back in her chair with a calm expression and laugh softly before saying, "Tapua, you worry too much. You're imagining things." Then she would shake her head like I was the one creating problems that didn't exist. Her words weren't just dismissive. They felt planned, almost as if she enjoyed watching me doubt myself. One evening, after another argument, she looked straight into my eyes with a smile that I had never seen before. There was no fear, no guilt, and no hesitation. "You'll never leave me," she said confidently. "You don't have the courage. We have children together, we built this business together, and you would never walk away from everything we've created." Those words stayed in my mind long after she walked away. It wasn't what she said that disturbed me the most. It was how certain she sounded. It was as if she already knew the ending of a story that I hadn't even started reading. Most people who have nothing to hide don't speak with that kind of confidence. From that moment, I stopped arguing. I stopped trying to prove that something was wrong. Instead, I started paying closer attention. Every smile, every excuse, every late-night phone call, and every unexpected trip suddenly felt different. Deep inside, I realized this wasn't an ordinary marriage problem anymore. Esh wasn't acting fearless because she trusted me. She was acting fearless because she believed I would never discover the truth. And somehow that confidence made me believe there was a much bigger secret hiding behind her smile. A few days later, I was sitting alone in my office, doing something I had done hundreds of times before. At the end of every month, I like to review our company's financial records myself. It helped me stay informed about every expense and every payment. I wasn't looking for anything unusual that day. I was simply making sure everything was in order. Then one transaction caught my attention. It was a payment for a luxury hotel. At first, I assumed it was related to a business meeting, so I moved on. But a few minutes later, I noticed another payment to a different hotel in another city. Then I found airline tickets booked only for one passenger. None of those dates matched any family vacation or company trip that I could remember. I pulled out my calendar and compared every payment with our business schedule. The more I checked, the more confused I became. These weren't random mistakes. They formed a pattern. Someone had been spending large amounts of money without any clear business reason. For a moment, anger rushed through me. I wanted to call Esh immediately and demand an explanation. I wanted to know why these payments existed and where the money had really gone. But something inside me told me to stay calm. If I confronted her without solid proof, she would probably deny everything and erase whatever evidence remained. So I stayed silent. Instead of asking questions, I started collecting answers. I saved copies of every invoice, every bank transfer, and every travel receipt that seemed suspicious. I created a private folder that no one else could access. Every new document went into that folder, carefully organized by date. As the days passed, the strange payments continued. More hotel bookings appeared. More airline tickets were purchased. Every new record made the picture a little clearer. This was no accounting error. Someone was hiding something very carefully. That was the moment I realized this was bigger than a few missing dollars. I still didn't know the whole truth, but I knew one thing for certain. The money wasn't disappearing by accident, and I was determined to follow every clue until I discovered exactly where it was going. I knew I couldn't rely on guesses or emotions anymore. If I was going to uncover the truth, I needed facts that no one could deny. That was why I decided to do everything the right way. I spoke with legal advisors who explained exactly what I could and could not do. Then I hired experienced digital investigators to examine the financial records and business transactions. I wanted every step to stay completely within the law because I knew the truth would only matter if it was supported by real evidence. For several weeks I said nothing to Esh. At home I acted as if life was normal. We had dinner together, talked about the children, and followed our usual routines. But behind the scenes, every new piece of information was being carefully collected and verified. The investigators worked quietly, connecting details that I could never have discovered on my own. Little by little, the puzzle started coming together. Travel confirmations matched the dates of the unexplained hotel payments. Airline tickets lined up perfectly with business trips that Esh had described very differently. Security camera timestamps placed her in locations she had claimed she had never visited. Every document told the same story from a different angle. Then came the financial records. Money had been moved from company accounts through transactions designed to look ordinary. The transfers were small enough to avoid attention, but together they added up to a shocking amount. The investigators traced the money to hidden accounts connected to another man who had been working closely with Esh behind my back. The final evidence was the hardest to see. Messages between the two of them revealed that this wasn't just a secret relationship. They were planning their future together while discussing how to move company funds before Esh officially filed for divorce. They believed everything had been planned perfectly. By the end of the investigation, my phone held everything. Every travel record, every financial document, every timestamp, and every verified message was organized inside one secure folder. I looked at that screen for a long time. It wasn't just a collection of files anymore. It was the truth. And soon, the woman who believed she had hidden everything would be forced to look at the same screen and realize her biggest secret had already been uncovered. A few days later, Esh finally said the words I had been expecting. She walked into the living room with a calm expression, crossed her arms, and looked at me without the slightest sign of regret. In a cold voice she said she wanted a divorce. There was no sadness in her face, no emotion in her voice. It sounded like she had already planned every step long before that conversation. Then she smiled. "I've made my decision," she said confidently. "You'll accept whatever I decide. You always do." I looked at her quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. My silence seemed to confuse her for a moment, but then she laughed as if she had already won. She believed I was too afraid to lose our marriage, our children, and the business we had built together. Instead of answering, I simply asked, "Would you have lunch with me tomorrow? Just one last conversation." She smiled again, certain she was still in control. The next afternoon, we met at a quiet restaurant where we had celebrated anniversaries years before. It was strange sitting across from the woman I had once trusted with my whole heart. She ordered coffee and spoke casually, almost like we were discussing ordinary business instead of ending 18 years of marriage. She leaned back in her chair and looked straight into my eyes. "You'll never leave me," she said with a smug smile. "You don't have the courage." A few people at nearby tables turned their heads after hearing her words. The restaurant suddenly felt much quieter, but I remained completely calm. I didn't defend myself. I didn't accuse her of anything. There was no anger left inside me, only certainty. Slowly, I reached into my pocket and unlocked my phone. Without saying a single word, I placed it on the table between us and gently slid it toward her. First she looked confused. Then she lowered her eyes to the screen. Her smile disappeared almost immediately. She picked up the phone and began scrolling through the files. The confidence that had filled her face only seconds earlier slowly faded away. Her hands started to shake, and the color drained from her face. Finally, she looked up at me with frightened eyes and whispered, How did you get all of this? Esh's hands trembled as she slowly scrolled through the screen. Just a few moments earlier, she had been smiling with complete confidence. Now that smile was gone. The restaurant around us seemed to disappear as her eyes stayed locked on my phone. She kept scrolling, hoping she would find some mistake, but every new file only made the truth impossible to deny. The first folder contained travel confirmations. Every hotel reservation, every airline ticket, and every date had been arranged in perfect order. She recognized them immediately. I could see it in her face. Before she could even recover, she opened another folder. This time it was the financial records. Every transfer from our company accounts had been highlighted and connected to matching bank documents. The small payments she thought no one would notice had been carefully traced. Together, they revealed a pattern that could not be explained away as simple business expenses. Her breathing became heavier. She kept scrolling. Then she found the timeline. Every meeting, every business trip, every late-night excuse she had given me was placed beside security camera timestamps and verified travel records. The story she had told me for months completely fell apart. Every lie was standing next to the truth. She quickly looked at me, searching my face for anger. But she found none. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't insulting her. I wasn't trying to embarrass her in front of anyone. I simply sat there quietly, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. That seemed to frighten her more than any argument ever could. Then she opened the final folder. Inside were the messages she believed had disappeared forever. Every conversation had been legally recovered and organized in order. They discussed secret meetings, hidden accounts, and plans for moving company money before asking for a divorce. There was nothing left to explain. For the first time in years, Esh had no clever answer. No confident smile. No sarcastic laugh. She finally understood that I had never been reacting out of jealousy or fear. While she believed she was controlling the situation, I had spent months quietly preparing for every possible outcome. She slowly placed the phone back on the table. Tears filled her eyes as reality finally caught up with her. In that single moment, one small screen changed everything. The woman who believed she held all the power now realized the truth had been waiting in my hands all along. After leaving the restaurant, Esh didn't know what to do. The confidence she had carried for months had disappeared in a single afternoon. She had believed that the man she trusted would stand beside her no matter what happened. In her mind, they had already planned a new life together. She thought they would face every challenge as a team. But reality turned out to be very different. Only a day after our meeting, news began to spread that investigators had uncovered suspicious financial activity involving company funds. Lawyers started reviewing documents, and formal questions were being asked. The secret plan that Esh believed was perfectly hidden was no longer a secret. She immediately tried calling the businessman. The first call went unanswered. She sent a message. There was no reply. She tried again later that evening, hoping he was simply busy. But this time the call went straight to voicemail. Hours passed without a single response. The next morning, she discovered that her messages had not even been read. Still refusing to believe what was happening, she visited his office without telling anyone. She expected him to calm her fears and promise that everything would be fine. Instead, she was told he was unavailable. She waited outside for a long time, but he never appeared. Days later, the painful truth became impossible to ignore. He had stopped all contact. The man who had filled her mind with promises about freedom, success, and a happy future had disappeared the moment legal consequences became real. He wasn't willing to risk his own future to protect her. When everything was easy, he stayed close. But when responsibility arrived, he walked away without looking back. For the first time, Esh found herself completely alone. There was no one left to blame. No one left to hide behind. The person she had trusted more than her own family had abandoned her without a single explanation. Every promise he had made vanished as quickly as he did. She finally understood a painful lesson. Someone who encourages you to betray honesty may also betray you when life becomes difficult. The future she had imagined was gone, and all that remained was the damage caused by choices she could no longer undo. News of our separation spread through the family much faster than I expected. Within a few days, phone calls started coming from relatives, old friends, and even distant cousins. As often happens, people began forming opinions before they knew the truth. Some quietly assumed I must have done something wrong. Others believed I had failed as a husband. A few even suggested that I should have fought harder to save the marriage. I didn't argue with anyone. I knew that rumors grow louder when people only hear one side of the story. Instead of defending myself through endless phone calls, I invited both families to a private meeting. I wanted everyone to hear the truth at the same time, without shouting, blaming, or creating more pain for our children. When everyone arrived, the room felt heavy with silence. Some people avoided looking at me. Others seemed ready to criticize me before I even spoke. I took a deep breath and calmly thanked them for coming. Then I placed a folder on the table. "I didn't ask you here to make anyone look bad," I said quietly. "I only want you to understand why this marriage ended." One by one I showed them the facts. I shared the financial records, the verified travel history, and the timeline that had been carefully organized over several months. I explained everything without raising my voice. I never called Esh names. I never tried to embarrass her. I simply let the evidence tell the story. As the room grew quieter, I noticed people's expressions changing. The relatives who had doubted me slowly lowered their heads. Some looked shocked. Others couldn't believe how long I had carried this burden without telling anyone. An elderly aunt wiped tears from her eyes and softly said, "You protected this family longer than most people could have." Another relative apologized for judging me before knowing the truth. In that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need revenge to clear my name. The truth had done it for me. My family finally understood that I had stayed calm not because I was weak, but because I wanted to protect my dignity, my children, and the future they still deserved. That understanding meant more to me than winning any argument ever could. Several weeks passed without any contact from Esh. During that time, I focused on my children, my work, and slowly rebuilding a peaceful routine. For the first time in months, the house felt quiet. The pain was still there, but each day I learned how to carry it without letting it control my life. Then one evening, just as I was finishing some paperwork, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw Esh's name. For a few seconds, I simply stared at it. I wasn't sure if I should answer. After taking a deep breath, I picked up the call. "Hello." For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard her crying. It wasn't the confident voice I remembered from the restaurant. It wasn't the woman who had smiled and told me I would never leave her. Her voice was weak, filled with regret, and barely strong enough to speak. "Tapua," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I didn't interrupt her. She told me that she had confused excitement with real love. She admitted that the attention she received from another man had made her believe she was starting a better life. She had convinced herself that she could control every situation, and that everything would work out exactly as she planned. "But I was wrong," she said through tears. "I lost the people who truly cared about me because I was chasing something that wasn't real." She apologized for every lie, every secret, and every decision that had hurt our family. Then she said something I never expected. "I'm not asking you to take me back," she said quietly. "I know I don't deserve that. I only hope that one day you can forgive me." Her words were sincere, and I could hear the pain in her voice. I believe she truly regretted what had happened. I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "Esh," I said calmly, "I don't want to spend my life filled with anger. For my own peace, I choose to forgive you." She began crying even harder. "But forgiveness and trust are not the same," I continued gently. "Trust is built over many years, and when it's broken again and again, it cannot be restored with one apology." She didn't argue. She simply thanked me for listening. When the call ended, I quietly placed my phone on the table. My heart felt lighter because I had chosen peace, but I also understood that some chapters in life are meant to end, no matter how much regret follows them. After everything that had happened, many people expected me to celebrate. Some friends told me I had won. Others wanted me to speak badly about Esh or enjoy the fact that her plans had fallen apart. They believed this was my chance to get revenge and make everyone see that I had been right all along. But that wasn't the kind of man I wanted to become. I had already lost enough. I wasn't going to lose my peace as well. Instead of looking back at the past every day, I decided to focus on building a better future. My children needed a father who was calm, strong, and present. They had already seen enough pain. I promised myself that they would never feel forced to choose between their mother and me. Whenever they wanted to spend time with Esh, I encouraged them. No matter what had happened between us, she was still their mother. I refused to let my personal hurt become a burden they had to carry. Children deserve love from both parents whenever it is possible. At the same time, I gave more attention to my business. I worked hard, treated my employees fairly, and made every decision with honesty. Slowly, the company became stronger than ever before. New clients trusted us because our reputation was built on integrity, not shortcuts or hidden deals. As my life improved, I noticed something surprising. I no longer woke up thinking about betrayal. I no longer replayed painful memories in my mind. My energy was no longer being wasted on anger. It was being invested in my family, my work, and my future. People often ask me how I managed to move forward after everything that happened. My answer was always simple. Holding on to bitterness only gives yesterday more power over today. The greatest victory in my life wasn't proving Esh wrong. It wasn't watching someone else face the consequences of their choices. My greatest victory was protecting my character when it would have been easier to become bitter. I refused to let betrayal change the kind of person I was. In the end, I didn't win because someone else lost. I won because I refused to lose myself. And that kind of victory can never be taken away by anyone. 1 year passed faster than I ever imagined. Life looked very different now. My children were smiling again, my business was growing, and the heavy sadness that had once followed me everywhere had slowly been replaced with peace. The painful chapter of my life was finally behind me, but the lessons it taught me stayed with me every single day. One Saturday morning, I bought a new phone. It wasn't a big moment. I simply wanted to replace my old one after using it for several years. As I sat at my desk preparing to transfer my files, photos, and contacts, the process seemed simple. Everything moved quickly from one device to the other. Then I noticed one folder. It had no special name, only a small lock icon beside it. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. Inside that folder was every document that had changed my life. The travel records, the financial reports, the timelines, the messages. Every piece of evidence that had revealed the truth about my marriage was still there, exactly where I had saved it months before. My finger rested on the delete button. Part of me wanted to erase everything forever. I didn't want reminders of betrayal following me into the future. I had already moved on. I had forgiven. I had rebuilt my life. But after sitting quietly for a long moment, I made a different choice. Instead of deleting the folder, I transferred it into a secure archive where it would remain safely stored and out of sight. Not because I wanted to relive the pain. Not because I planned to use it again. But because it reminded me of something I never wanted to forget. The truth doesn't need loud voices, angry arguments, or revenge to survive. It only needs patience. I smiled softly as I locked the archive and finished setting up my new phone. That folder no longer represented the worst day of my life. It represented the day I stopped doubting myself and started trusting the facts instead of fear. Looking back now, I understand one lesson more clearly than ever. Sometimes people laugh because they believe they have hidden the truth forever. They believe no one will ever discover what they have carefully covered up. What they never imagine is that, somewhere quietly waiting without a single word, the truth may already be sitting inside someone else's phone. Real strength isn't proving someone wrong. It's remaining calm enough to let the truth speak when the time finally comes. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe honesty will always outlast deception, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who believes that patience is often stronger than revenge.